Okay, why don't I call the meeting to order for Wenham FinCom, Wednesday, May 20th, 5:31 p.m. And members in attendance, Jim Purdy, Mike Therian, David Molitano, and where are you? Is that it? Did I get everybody? Yes. Okay, cool. Not present yet, Carrie Jelsma. So, continuing on our weekly updates for the budget, as we've got a couple key things coming up, namely the end of the current fiscal year being one of them. Discussion of 1/12 budget continuing allowed by state government if we do not have an approved FY21 budget yet. I know there's been a little bit of talk on that. There's been some updates on the Hamilton side. We're about to get some more information from the schools. BOS just met. So maybe Chris or Anthony, would either of you like to just kind of kick it off and give any updates from your side?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll throw it to Chris. All right. What we did is, Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 allowed the towns to be able to go into a 1/12 budget. So what we did this week is, we needed to start the ball rolling as far as getting ready for when a town meeting happens and what a new revised budget would look like based on what we're now projecting for revenues and the little shuffle around of some expenses that we did. So we're doing two things. We're going to we prepared a 1/12 budget, which Chris will go over next. And then we also have our first crack at an amended FY21 budget, which I'll brief you on. Jackie couldn't make it tonight, so I'm going to do her update on that. So we're ready to get right into the 1/12 with Chris, and then we can move along. Oh, Carrie's here. Hold on. Let her in. Here's Carrie.
Good evening, Carrie.
Oh, you muted.
Thanks. Hi. Okay, we just got started, and so you didn't miss a whole lot. Thanks for joining us. So Anthony, question for you before we talk about kind of the 1/12 piece of it. Mm-hmm. So revisions to FY21. Do you plan to, and you're going to cover that in a few in Jackie's place. Is that something that you'll be bringing before the select board or the FinCom or both in one order or another or simultaneously, or how do you think that should play out?
So the Board of Selectmen heard it last night. They heard both versions. We didn't expect them to take obviously any votes on it. It was the first time that they had seen it, and I think that they may have gotten it either late Friday night or Saturday morning, so they didn't have much time to digest everything. But and they had some questions and a follow-up. But I anticipate on Tuesday that we'd probably be ready for them to approve the 1/12, so we can upload that into the DOR system and get that approved, so we can ensure that we can make sure that we can pay the bill starting July 1. And then we'll talk about the FY21 budget again, break that down into what we think the overrides would be on that split, because we just gave them the $1 million that you'll hear is the deficit still. So I expect it to be south of what we had. We certainly are not going higher, that's for sure, but it will be south of what the original override is. But right now we had a level services budget before, and a level service budget meant an override. And what we were able to do is reduce revenues, but still have an override, unfortunately. It's bad timing, but it is what it is.
So just to separate those two out, so the 1/12 seems more like a procedural or kind of mechanics, and we can get into the details as to how it works, but I think it's as simple as FY20 full budgeted expenditures, budget appropriations divided by 12. But then the FY21, to the extent that you and others at Town Hall have come up with potential savings opportunities, those specifically will be discussed either in, because the BOS haven't seen those just yet, or was that what you were referring to?
That's what I was referring to. They've seen what I think Chris emailed out to you folks before this meeting, so you may have it in your emails what they've received. Okay,
so FinCom has some digesting to do of newer information. Got it. We do have that now.
Yeah.
Somewhat recently, and we'll be in a position to discuss, in a better position to ask questions about and make suggestions to FY21 following, full review of that information that was sent.
Yeah, and you can let Chris know and he can adjust an agenda next week. So when you meet, if you want to get into any specifics and you want anybody present or anything, just keep in mind that it is the holiday on Monday, so everything got moved up by a day on posting.
Okay.
Just a quick question, Alex, Anthony. So we'll go, the 1/12 will be predicated on the existing budget, right? Is that what I just want to understand that?
Pretty much, yeah.
20 expenditures?
Pretty much, yes. Well, based on 120 expenditures plus collective bargaining commitments.
Okay, and that will continue until such time that we actually have a town meeting to vote on the new fiscal 21 budget.
So you submit a month at a time. So what we're going to submit to DOR is July's, and quite honest, I'm hoping that we have a town meeting so we don't have to continue to do this, because there's consequences to continuing on with this. The budget, the schools could have it. Hamilton seems to be all set, that they're still rolling for the 20th. So at some point, we'll talk to the selectmen and see if we can, if we're ready to pick a date
for the town meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you say Hamilton is ready for the 20th of June?
Hamilton is a goal for the 20th in June. They're using the football field. They have a tent. And they're they asked us to, if we wanted to piggyback on them. Right now, the law doesn't allow us to do that. So we can't leave Wenham. So, and the other concern that we had is our quorum. Hamilton's quorum is 75. Our quorum is 120. I know there'll still be some residents that may be concerned about coming out for a town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that we were kind of also waiting on the legislature, because they were supposed to have that bill that was going to do two things that would have helped us. Number one, it would allow us to go with Hamilton if we wanted to, and go outside of the limits of Wenham to hold our town meeting. And the second was to reduce a quorum. If the Board of Selectmen wanted to do that with a public hearing, you could reduce that. The caveat is you can only take up the financial articles, and everything else would be pushed off to a fall town meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a quick.
Carrie, sorry, go ahead, Carrie. Yep.
Did you just hear me swear?
No, I saw you had a question. That's all.
Technical question. I think the answer is no. You just needed to submit it to DOR. But for a 1/12 budget, that's nothing anyone needs to vote on, except
the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen need to vote and approve it. It needs to be certified by the town clerk, and we need to upload that into the DOR system.
Okay.
It's just the Board of Selectmen.
To approve it.
FinCom doesn't need to approve it.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Is there anything with regard to Hamilton? So I did also receive a note from David Wenger this afternoon, just kind of touching base, and with regards to their June 20th annual town meeting under a tent, and that's at the football field. Is that the plan?
Yes.
You mentioned the tent. I didn't. It makes perfect sense that it would be there. Is that subject to any lifting of restrictions, or is it?
No.
No, we know of it's nothing will stand in its way.
So the laws right now on the restriction of crowds, the legislative body is exempt. So town meeting is the legislative body, so therefore we are exempt from gatherings over 10.
So are there so there are no lockdown restrictions, is that what I'm hearing, that would prevent
That's
us
correct.
from doing so, provided we
That's-
want to have a scheduled date for town meeting?
That's correct.
Okay. I think I was, and maybe others were not, I think I was under the impression that we were awaiting we've been in a waiting game for some time, so maybe that's just the mode that the public is in, having made this tremendous personal sacrifice to stay inside for 10 plus weeks. But I was under the impression that the state would not allow such social gatherings at the same time you're saying legislative body approves to be exempt. So that's good. Okay. So given Hamilton's moving forward to the 20th and ours is not yet, I suppose, finalized with regard to the warrant being posted with a specific town meeting date. That's correct. That does raise some potential challenges. I mean, we can get into the 1/12 in terms of what it means, and I think it means some challenges because expenditures are always up year to year, and at what point is 1/12 of our prior fiscal year appropriation going to cover it, and what gives over time? It also is kind of a budget in limbo, which I'm not really I don't think is the direction we want to pursue unless we had to. But it raises questions as to our partnership with Hamilton as the other member community in the schools, and what happens if they were to approve the school's budget, for example, at their town meeting, and of course should we have not had held a town meeting by that point, and we were 1/12, what would that mean for the schools? Our paying of the assessment in effect.
They wouldn't have a budget. That's why each community in regional school districts should be submitting a 1/12 in the event that you can't hold a town meeting. So it's there, and that's what the Board of Selectmen voted on last night to support the method of what they had to submit for a 1/12 budget, which is the alternative assessment. I won't get into that because it's more complicated than I think you need to know about right now. But so it would default to their 1/12 budget, which, what's the ramifications of that, Alex? Honestly, I don't know. I have to talk to the superintendent. I haven't been able to get a hold of her.
Suffice it to say, if we don't have a town meeting, the school's budget is not ratified. It hasn't passed effectively.
Correct.
So does that force them into a 1/12 budget if we had not held a town meeting?
I believe it would.
Okay. I mean, it seems, reasonable procedurally, but I don't know legally how that would play out. I suppose that weighs into see, it seems like it's like an if or when our determination and decision to have a town meeting. It feels like we know we need to have one. The question is when, and I don't know really kind of what our motivation is for waiting beyond the obvious that there's still a public health concern. Tying it in with Hamilton's has always kind of worked from the standpoint of aligning decision timeframes.
We did do a survey, which you can find on the town's website. I'd ask that you all take that survey because we were trying to gauge the residents as far as, are they planning on voting? If not, they don't plan on voting. Why? Is it because they're scared of the pandemic? And what can we do? What we're trying to do is what can we find out and how can we mitigate their fears? And we did the same thing with town meeting. And the last question is, we have our plans are 2 locations right now we could hold a town meeting. It could be, multiple locations, but the 2 that we're thinking of right now is the A.J. Gordon Memorial Chapel, seats 1,400 people. I'm quite confident that we could socially distance a town meeting for Wenham there. As well as or if we could do it under a tent somewhere. But obviously there's challenges with that, but if that's what residents wanted, those could be 2 options amongst others.
David?
Yeah, just a concern personally. So I would be preferable to an outdoor space, social distancing. I think everything inside is not preferable for me. So if there's leanings either way, not that I wouldn't mind being under tent with you guys, but anything that's not a contained space for the next few weeks is something I would be more comfortable with.
If you could take that survey, Dave, that would be great. You know, there's challenges.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this recent one. We just loaded it uploaded it to the website yesterday. But you know, there's folks that would say, you know, some of our senior population in June, when it can be a hot day under a tent, can be challenging too. So you're right. You know, it's some people are going to feel strong one way, some people are going to feel strong the other.
And as it relates to David, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a good opportunity to mention for FinCom, and I'm sure with town employees as well. Anyone who doesn't feel comfortable with whatever the venue is, by all means doesn't have to, you know, participate in it in person for sure. So I think, you know, the plans are still not clear. I hope we do have a town meeting and don't have to resort to a 112, especially in light of the schools in Hamilton looking to wrap up their side. I hope we can do the same. But you know, for everybody on the FinCom, that's super important. I think that everyone feels comfortable. And I'm sure, Anthony, from the town hall side as well, that employees are obviously in a position where they can, you know, say, hey, you know, I don't want to take part in the.
Yeah, you know, we've been planning it and really working out the logistics. So I think that our team's ready to roll forward when the selectmen are, and whatever the alternative that the residents want, we'll put together, and we'll do the very best we can. You know, and of course, remember, if we do want to have it and we choose to go into court to lower the quorums and all that, then we're limited just to the financial articles. So hopefully it'd be a real short town meeting if it's only 5 or 6 articles.
Yes.
Anthony, what would our quorum, if the legislation passed, what would our quorum required to be?
So the way that they wrote it, minimum is 10%, but the selectmen could decide on 50%, and they would have to have a public hearing and get input and then set the quorum. But the model had,
10% of what?
120.
So you start at the 120.
Yeah, so model head quorum was 300. They went into court and they brought it down to 30. They're hoping that they get more than 30, but they didn't think that they'd get 300, and they're going to just take up their financial articles.
So we could have if it was 10%, we would be legal in having a town meeting of 12?
If that's what we went into court and asked for, like Marblehead, yeah, that'd be legal. Just taking up the financial articles, though.
So we could
just
have
to get a
potentially, you know, with respect to David, David's concern, we could have the town meeting with 20 people at Bucher and be socially, you know.
Yeah, except the whole thing is if 200 people come at Bucher, then I wouldn't, not feel comfortable. You know, that's why if we're going to do it, if you're going to do it indoors, then I would say the chapel, which is huge and high ceilings, is probably the safest bet. Even if it's 20 people, that's fine. If it's 200, I think that we still could, for an hour.
You could still separate in that chapel.
Yeah, you could still separate. You know, there has the upstairs too, so.
So the selectmen have the flexibility to say 10%, 20%, 30%?
Not right now, no. The legislature hasn't approved that. So the only thing that they could do is say, let's go into court and have a judge agree to lower our quorum.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Has there been an interest expressed in doing that or not doing that at this stage?
No, you know, we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks that, it's going to be passed. It's taken up this week. It's coming this week. And then everybody puts their hands on it and tries to add something, and it's gotten muddied. So
sorry, Anthony,
I think it was hoping.
I meant from our select board. Have they expressed an interest in reducing the quorum or not?
I don't think it's really been discussed.
Okay.
I think that little sidebar conversations I've had with them that maybe if that was an option, that it's something that they would consider. I don't know if they ever would have said 10%, but maybe 50% that they may have. I'm not speaking for the board, but that's just kind of some
I guess,
side conversations.
I guess you would look to, well, one approach would be to look to public comment, to solicit and evaluate public comment to get a sense for what that right balance is. You don't want to waste the time and resources.
And that's why we started this survey too. So
Yeah.
if the survey comes up with, 60 people say, I'm coming to town meeting, well, then maybe that, for the next, I don't know if we'll get a results. We probably won't get a results by Tuesday, but certainly for the following Tuesday, then that's a deciding factor for them.
Okay. Okay.
Obviously we're gonna have to put this on the agenda, I think, every week going forward till we decide on a date. I think it's important to keep up there now.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, we're now within a month of Hamilton, so I think not that we have to fall in lockstep with them, but
Nope.
we always have, and it does bring some level of convenience and sort of alignment in some respects, given that we're the biggest part of our budgets are the schools of which we're member communities. So in terms of things that happen next, so FinCom, we have information in our emails with respect to 112, and maybe Chris, in a minute, you can give us a little bit more detail on that. Just kind of talk us through it, help us think through anything that you want us to be aware of before we review that, as well as some FY21 potential considerations. We need to vote on any changes to those, of course, as a FinCom. And we can, at that time, also knowing what any adjusted ultimately from the schools, if they adjust their budget in light of the revenue change expectations, and if there's any changes on the town side, make sure that we know what the total number is for any overrides, recast our votes on those if people want to. I think it makes sense to do so. It doesn't suggest there's a change in how we vote, but a change in the amount of an override, I think, warrants a vote of the show of support to town meeting. Should town meeting date be announced in the near term? I suppose the soonest it would be in the selectmen meeting, board of selectmen meeting next Tuesday. It sounds like, if you're scheduled to meet then. And I'm not saying that it will be, but at the soonest it would be. And then at that point, we need to get on top of a budget forum date as well, likely to be held in this format of Zoom, I suspect. Although, does that constitute I guess we're not the governing body now.
No, you're not the legislative body.
The royal we, the legislative body is town meeting itself. Yeah, right. Okay. Any other comments or questions on that?
I have kind of a general thought that may be premature, but as you know, the school committee and the district administration are looking at 1.745 million in cuts that we've talked about some. They already had a couple meetings about, and there is a lot of pushback about those cuts, and the 1.74 million comes from a reduction in Chapter 70 and transportation funding, maybe some other, but if those cuts go through, so we don't get that level of funding, and the towns vote to keep those programs in place, then that's going to be an even greater override. And so I guess, has anyone thought about or run numbers on different permutations if that happens?
Are you saying, so with the revenue loss, if they don't make the cuts and just want the towns to eat that?
Yeah, yes, yep.
So the ballot questions wouldn't allow, the ballot question only allows up to, what was the number, 700 and something? I don't remember exactly.
720-ish.
Yeah, that's it. So that's the most that, those ballot questions are valid, and anything above that,
would require like a special town meeting, or how would that even play out? Like
for the school, to make, or the towns to vote to make up that difference?
We'd have to have another election.
Right.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out the puts and takes of it, because there is discussion about, you know, if the 1.75 million doesn't come through, if there's a 20% cut from state funding, can the towns
Right.
make up some of the difference? So then we're looking at an even bigger burden on our tax revenue.
So yeah, that's an excellent point, Carrie, that you raised. So I think,
And it's premature, but the discussions are happening online and in person and in meetings right now.
for sure, yeah, in support of the schools in this tough predicament that they're in as
Yeah.
well, right? So I think that residents are not, of course, given the choice, because the school committee, right? It's the school committees. They're the governing body that sets forth the budget, and so. But I think what you're getting at is the fact that residents could express via the school committee a desire to retain the planned expenditures and service levels, despite an expected, you know, drastic reduction in revenue from the state, and just pass that to the town. And what would that mean? And I think, and then hypothetically, and you're saying 1.75, I thought it was 1.3, but you're closer to it than I am, Carrie.
Closer to 2 million.
I'm sorry, closer to 2 million?
Yeah, is that right?
Yes, I can hear you, Vinny.
Yeah, I'm remembering 1.74 million or in that ballpark.
I thought it was 1.27, but 1.3, but
Oh, maybe I'm flipping numbers. Okay.
Flipping wouldn't be bad if it goes down, right?
So, okay. So the question then becomes impact on the town's budget. The assessment increases dramatically. Our budget, our article structure allocates a portion to, in our level services article, and the remainder in another article. And if those warrant articles as being on the ballot, excuse me, are valid and fixed unless otherwise changed, requiring, it sounds like a different election, then the way I see it is, I don't know, it seems like it couldn't increase. We've talked about the reverse. We've talked about if vote from home and early voting and ultimately all voters, all residents who vote, approve the override that was originally intended, where the opposite were true, if the numbers were to come in lower from the schools with respect to the Wenham assessment, then what would happen? And that would just give us basically potentially excess levy capacity, were we not to appropriate that at town meeting when it happens. But Carrie, that's a great point. So I think it'd be great to spell out just in short, just what would happen, just so everyone's on the same page, and not just us, Anthony, but I think Carrie's got a good handle on what's out there in the community with schools, and just to make sure that the schools kind of understand from a legal standpoint how it could play out or not.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that one. I'd have to speak with town council, but, you know, our election, our ballot's been set, and you can't change that. So honestly, I don't know. It just complicates an already complicated past 3 months.
Carrie,
Yes.
are you hearing, other than citizens, are you hearing that the school committee is leaning in the direction for the communities to make up this 1.7? Is that?
I listened to, did anyone attend or listen to or watch the meeting that was last week? Was it Thursday?
I watched part of it, yeah.
I did.
It was mainly discussions about a reduction in state funding.
Right.
There were some couple like philosophical general statements that, you know, it's the town's responsibility to fund whatever our students need, regardless of the impact on the towns. But that was more of a general kind of philosophical statement I heard.
Mhm.
Here, and you know, I don't remember if it was in that meeting or if it was a comment I saw online, and they're collecting comments right now that they're discussing now probably, where people have talked about, well, the towns would make up the difference with some of the, if we get a 20% cut from state funding, then the towns need to make up the difference. And I don't remember, I don't think I heard that in the meeting. I think those are more comments from the community. But there's a lot of comments from the community. I think people are getting engaged. I've gotten a dozen emails from different interest groups, arts, sports, special ed, world languages. There's people mobilizing. And also the school, as they have done the past year, I think, has done a really good job of outreach and soliciting input and engagement.
Well, in an effort to, if you were to curtail expenses to meet the suggested revenue decline, it would be substantial and, you know, definitely remarkable. So that community would likely be all the more impacted, right? We have an engaged community who cares a lot about the schools. And so it's more apt to resonate, I think, and I think would garner a lot of support for retaining those things. And then I think it's just a matter of understanding from a practical standpoint how it could or could not play out on the town side that would need to be up against. In theory, I mean, we had some, you know, circus acts, like, you know, plays at the last second at town meeting. Last year, of course, whereby the articles were kind of thrown askew. And I guess I wouldn't be surprised if there were, you know, a similar measure whereby, you know, in a show of support for the schools and an effort to retain the existing services and not subject the schools to cuts because of the state finances being so dire that, you know, it's like, no, I think we need the full budget. And that would, of course, shift a tremendous portion to the towns. And I think we need to know what that number is, and then hopefully not engage, you know, it wouldn't be, you know, too costly for legal to help us understand how that will play out just in terms of the difference of those in the assessment. What are our options, in other words? What are our options? And resident options is really what I mean. What does town meeting have before it as an option? Is it a non-starter because the ballots have been printed and votes cast? Does it require a special election, or does it actually mean that that the town is straddled with this burden, and it can now kind of shift the numbers and increase the override if need be? And if we were increasing the override from, you know, 1.1 roughly million to 2 million, well, that's something we should have a handle on in terms of, you know, tax rate impact and everything else that goes with it.
I have another, or can I ask another question that's a little different? Okay. Anthony or anyone else. So I read an article that said in 2009, 2010, Massachusetts had like a 4 billion and then a 4.8 billion deficit with the mortgage crisis. And the estimated deficit for the state budget now is ranging from 5 to 8 billion. So that's a big range and is more than 4.8 billion. But nonetheless, back in 2009, 2010, all the Chapter 70 funding was protected. So none of the budget gaps and filling that gap, no cuts were taken to Chapter 70 funds. And so I guess I was just wondering, and it seems like it's a huge hit this year, potentially, and 20 might even be an underestimate. What are you aware of, or have you heard any kind of broader discussion of to what extent Chapter 70 is or is not being protected? And, you know, what are the other areas that are going to be taking cuts in the state budget? Because I was surprised to hear. So then that leads me to my next question is, you know, how much can we do in terms of pushback on protecting Chapter 70 funding to the state?
To be honest, Carrie, we've been asking that question. Mayors, managers from across the state trying to get an idea on what the state revenues, state aid is going to look like, and we're just not getting an answer. And if you ask, you know, and I've been asking my colleagues, you know, we're all staying in touch. What are you doing for reductions? I think we're doing the right thing with the numbers that we're using, because other communities are saying, oh, I've only get 5%. And geez, that's a big, I guess I'd rather be wrong, be too conservative than than not. So, but we haven't gotten anything. Nobody's gotten anything, and everybody right now is just in a guessing game.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement about planning for worst case scenario. And now we're probably planning for medium case scenario. But I was just wondering about Chapter 70 relative to other big chunks of the state budget pie, which I haven't read anything or heard anything or found anything yet on that. But I just don't, I wonder if it's worth it for, you know, Hamilton and Wenham to get more organized, and with the school committee and the towns to push back to Tar and Hill and just ask them to try and get Chapter 70 funding protected. Sorry, there's discussion behind me. Chapter 70 funding protected the way it was in 2009, 2010. I mean, that was still $4.8 billion is still a lot.
Carrie, the sense I got from that legislative roundtable meeting a couple weeks ago was that 2009, 2010 absolutely saw a big hit. I was surprised to hear you say that there was the notion of protection there, that it was guaranteed to, that it was not subject to reduction at the discretion of the state to communities.
And like, it was like whatever the new Hamilton Wenham Chronicle is. I read it
Okay.
at an article day. I haven't checked that fact. I'm
Okay.
assuming that's accurate.
Oh, well, if you read it in the Chronicle, then. Sorry.
I still trust the
I mean, it just coming from, you know, Bruce Tar and Red Hill, it was pretty clear that, like, that's what happened in the most recent recession,
yeah.
right? In global financial crisis of 08, 09. And then I think they made reference to the recession in you know, 2000, you know, the tech bubble bursting in you know, 2000 and 01, 02, each year worse than the preceding. And so, and that's when they threw out those like 20, 30, and 40% numbers. So I was surprised when I heard you mention that there was any form of protection. I thought it was always at risk.
Well, and maybe it was at risk, but it ended up, that's what the article said, is Chapter 70 was not
Yeah.
cut in 2009, 2010. So to fill that 4.8 and 4 billion budget gap did not come from Chapter 70.
That remains to be seen what they do. You know, right now, all tensions on the pandemic. Obviously, it's shifting to reopening, so maybe that's time that they start talking about some budgets, and that's when they'll start getting lobbied by the various groups, which will play an impact.
Right. Yeah, and that isn't to say you can't or shouldn't fight for it, Carrie. You're right about that, definitely. And both the schools and town should join forces on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't have any other questions or remarks other than, Chris, do you want to just give us a quick high-level primer on the 112th, and then we'll review it in more detail in the communication that you sent? We should all have that now.
I haven't seen it, but
You're on mute. We got it a couple hours ago, Jim.
I was just looking
Or-
before I came upstairs. I'll take another look. I must have
Okay.
missed it. I must have missed it.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to send that when I sent out the agenda the other day. That was my fault. I'm sorry
No
about
problem.
that.
No
I
problem.
sent them
We'll
before the
review it.
meeting. So basically, the 112 budget is, you know, based off the current year FY20, 1/12 of that. But there's also a few things, exceptions to that, like debt payments. Debt payments need to be funded. We have a debt payment come due on August 1st, which is a Saturday. So we have that's 105,000. So that that is included in the 112 budget. Also, retirement, our Essex retirement payment is, we got a big, like, $15,000 discount if we pay it all up front in one payment. So we're able to budget that full payment in July, along with our general insurance, which we receive a discount if we pay it up front. So those are included, full thing. The salaries are calculated we have 2 payroll warrants in July. So all the salaries are calculated for regular employees on 2 pay periods. So 2 pays, and there'll be one stipend pay. That's how the salaries were calculated. And pretty much all the other expenses are just 1/12 of the previous, which besides those few I mentioned that have the exceptions. And the school debt is something that is another one that is mandatory to be funded. So the school debt, as of right now, I have it in as the approved school committee budget as of I think it was the February meeting. So that is, as of right now, their FY21 payment for July. That's in there because that's in the guidelines that the school assessments need to be paid as well. So with that, the general fund is, approximately 2.6 million, and then with the water included in there, another 25,000 or so brings it up to, with the general fund and water, to about a 2.7 million July 1/12 budget.
So, sorry, you've got the line items that you have listed, Chris, the departments and the expenses that would be paid in July, right? And under 1/12 circumstance.
Yes.
Did they total 2.707?
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's what the expenses total.
Okay.
And I broke it up because the guidelines, the guidance on, they have the guidance on the process to what we need to go through, but they haven't come up with the specifics on how they want it submitted. So for our purposes, I broke up the general fund and the water separate and then put the total in as well.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Hey, Chris, this is Mike. Where's the school part? You said you had, I don't see it.
What was that, Mike? Sorry.
Right here, Mike. Mike, right here. See where my mouse is? See where the mouse on the 953, the regional school assessment?
Oh, I see it. Okay, sorry, thank you.
So also with this was just the more detailed one that I put kind of what you're used to seeing with our budget year to year, with the different salaries and expenses. When we need to submit this to the DOR for approval, it won't be in this detailed. It will just most likely be a lump sum.
Right.
And the Board of Selectmen asked Chris to put together a summary, which for their next meeting, so you'll get that same summary version for your next meeting.
Okay. Okay, and our next meeting will be, we have through, I remember Jackie and Chris booked through May, so we've got next Wednesday as well, right? Same time? Is that?
You need to do your agenda by what, Friday? Because Monday's a holiday?
We had, well, we had standing Wednesdays. I can dig through emails to know if next Wednesday was one of those that was booked, or if we timed out after this one. Does that make sense?
All right, but just for agenda purposes, if you guys wanted to review what you're looking at in your emails, you need to post something before 1 o'clock noontime on Friday.
Yep. I think we might have lost Chris. I don't see him clicking through all your pictures, so.
I'll stop sharing this so you can see everybody.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
We did lose him. He'll jump back on.
Yep. So, okay. So yeah, I mean, certainly budget discussion will encompass it broadly, but we can be more specific with regard to any questions on 1/12, and also the numbers in there that I think are really important at FY21. We want to get some resolution on that. We'll look for an update Tuesday as to whether or not there's any movement on the annual town meeting, setting of a date, and be prepared to look at, if we need to factor in a quick timeline for a budget form. And we'll have information from the schools in the meantime, and I can share my communication with Hamilton FinCom Chair David Wenger as well, the rest of FinCom. Other than that, I don't have anything. Anyone else open up for general?
Just a quick question, Alex.
Sure, Jim.
Wouldn't Hamilton be experiencing the same ballot challenge that we're going to be experiencing? They printed their ballots in terms of the numbers and the
They didn't,
fingers?
Jim, I don't think they weren't up against an override though.
Well, that's right. They didn't have
They
to.
had sufficient levy
Right.
capacity.
Thank you. I forgot.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
They were, I know they were contemplating, and I don't think they landed at this, a combination of articles that would fully fund the assessment, regardless of the need for an override.
Right. I forgot that. That's right.
But I don't think they landed on that. Does anyone have confirmation on that?
I think that from what Joe told me yesterday, that they are going to do a split on the school.
Yes, I agree with you. I heard the same from David Wanger. However, I don't know how that would play out given, assuming they had ballots printed as we do.
There's no ballots. That wasn't an override. So everything was within their levy. So their
so
ballots.
It'll just be a town meeting.
It's a town meeting thing. That's all with them.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember that now. Yeah.
And then that raises the question, Jim, to your point, if they're approaching their assessment funding via two articles, one up to a percentage and then the other the full assessment, how would their strategy, their approach to the financial articles change should the underlying number change? Should something be passed in the town? Do they then?
I wonder if that may put them into an override position. Who knows?
It's a good point. It's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, I don't know their numbers well.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris, we lost you for a minute, but.
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer died. It said I had an hour left, and then it just died on me. Sorry about that.
Well, the battery was too weak to calculate its own capacity, I guess. No worries. So I think.
Issues too, excuse me.
Oh, no worries, David. It's all good. Any other general comments on where we're at or questions?
We do have a meeting scheduled for the 27th, by the way.
Thank you very much. 5:30 still?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Chris, we were just saying how maybe budget discussion, we could have more specifically sub-bullets or whatever, 1/12 and FY21.
Chris, I don't know if you were off. I told them how the selectmen asked you to do a summary. I've got a summary for Tuesday night that hopefully you'll have for Friday so we can get the packet out.
Oh, yeah. I'm working on that. I'll have that for when we meet tomorrow, Anthony.
Yeah, and then he'll send that same summary to you, which summarizes the 1/12. I think maybe a little bit clearer or simpler.
And then FinCom, you guys over the next week and myself included, we can sink our teeth into the 13-pager, which isn't bad, budget summary. That's, our roll-up effectively, not the super high level roll-up, but the departmental roll-up from Chris in the email a bit ago with what we had approved for FY21. Not approved, what we had voted to present to town for FY21 and versus any changes to it in the COVID column. So with that said, I can transition us to the final piece, which is just approval of last week's minutes, if people are available to, in a position to, and we could wrap and people can join the school committee if they're able.
Before you get into that?
I was going to say, did you need me to summarize anything on this FY21 proposal that we have here?
Why don't we review it?
Because I'm just going to read basically the memo to you, so I think that you can all read it on your own. And if you have any questions in between now and Wednesday, you certainly can reach out to me or Chris or Jackie.
Everyone
happy to help.
Reply all, so we're on the same page. If you got questions, fire them up, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, thanks, Anthony.
And then Alex, what you said you wanted the specific bullet points on the 1/12 budget?
In FY21.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if we have any kind of late breaking from schools between now and then, we can just via email before the deadline to update I guess it'd be Friday with 48 hours plus a day or something like that.
Yes, I made sure I got it posted, but we can make amendments to that up until Friday.
Okay, thanks. Great.
We've had a couple discussions briefly about any kind of joint meeting with the BOS. Is that still on the radar screen, or is that TBD based on, is that being contemplated? Is there a need for it, or where are we with that?
That's a good question, Carrie. My take on it is, and as I said before, I support our commitment to meeting with BOS, definitely. I think that the meetings we've had with them have been productive, especially related to the original pre-COVID FY21 challenges that we're up against and getting on the same page. I think that as it relates to town meeting date selection, that's, squarely in their realm and their site. So I don't think we need to meet with them to talk about that, but definitely if they want to discuss FY21, or 1/12, I'd definitely be up for that. So Anthony, I think that everyone on this call knows that because we've been saying that. So just keep us posted if you want to have one where no one's going anywhere, right, for a little while before we reopen and scramble. So just let us know. Carrie, was there anything specifically beyond that other than just checking in on kind of?
No, it's just checking in. I mean, I would think if we're digging into FY21, maybe, but I don't see a need for it at this point.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think we necessarily need to. I mean, if it came down to where are we with kind of the driving factors with respect to setting a town meeting date, I personally would hope that we arrive at a date soon, before June 30th, so we don't have to deal with 1/12. I don't think that'll be beneficial to have it unless there was some hidden gem benefit to the 1/12 that I'm not aware of. But that's up to them. So hopefully we have one we can work with, and then it's a matter of, trying to piece together a quick and efficient, succinct budget form. Here are the numbers, right, with regard to the shortened articles in the warrant, or shortened warrant with respect to number of articles that you're going to be up against under a tent or in a chapel or somewhere, not via Zoom, as the annual town meeting legislative body. So, and then we'll just hear if there's a change in quorum or something like that that's pursued. But I get that we can't just snap our fingers and make that happen yet. Anthony, the only thing I would say is, like, if you wouldn't mind, should you hear from the schools that there is, to Carrie's point, kind of this push to maybe shift a much larger assessment burden to the towns, we should just be well prepared to understand what options are for all parties then.
I have them on my phone now, trying to listen to what's going on there too.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I will.
Does anyone object to voting on approval of minutes from last week? We're keeping up to date on these.
I read them. They look fine to me, Alex.
Thanks. I read them as well. The only thing I will say is just back to the town meeting thing. There's a line item under budget discussion that selectmen voted to hold the annual town elections June 25th. Oh, sorry. When I first read that, I thought I read June 20th for the. No, Catherine, you had that. Fine. Sorry. I thought there was some confusion as to whether or not the date was set. Anthony, you cleared it up when you joined.
Yeah, no, the date wasn't set, Catherine. Did you type that? Yeah, no.
No.
Okay.
Catherine's notes are spot on.
Yeah, okay.
So I have, so I move that FinCom vote to approve the minutes from the meeting of May 13th, 2020, as provided.
Second the motion.
Thanks, Carrie. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Hearing none, then we'll go to a vote. Thank you. All in favor? Aye, Alex.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Dave.
Great. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Okay. Any final closing remarks? I got none.
Nope.
Actually, Alex, I would like to bring one thing up about the
Chris.
1/12. If we have to go into August, I got cut off before I got to mention it.
Okay.
One of the things we'll run into if we don't get to have our annual town meeting going into the 1/12, and we have to go the 1/12 into August, is we have our CPA, our town hall debt, comes due in August, which we pay for a portion of it out of CPA appropriations. So if we don't have our town meeting before August, we'll have to we won't be able to use those CPA funds to pay for our August town hall debt payment.
That's why we want to do a town meeting. We don't want to get into that situation where we don't have to do that.
Sure.
We already budgeted. We're already challenged. We don't need to.
Right. Right. And the incremental pain of doing it in having a meeting in July, even though well before August to cover town hall debt, still incurs the hassle of 1/12 in the month of July, right? For that same month. So yeah, I agree. I think we need to get the residents to approve whatever it is they're going to approve. What's the schedule in the town hall debt? Just curious, where we pay in July, is it quarterly?
Top of my head, I know majority of it comes due in August.
Oh, okay.
We have an August 1st payment, and then we have an August, I believe it's either the 15th or the 20th. That's our big one that when we did our refunding back a few years ago. So that's our big payment. I think it's around 200 or something like that off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thanks, David.
Carl second carries, whatever is first.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.